What do you think that these executives are afraid you're going to do to white America?
Probably stop some racism.
This is famed comedian Richard Pryor.
Stop racism.
Yeah, I'm probably afraid of that because then people don't hate each other, and people start talking to each other, and then they start talking to each other, they find out who's the problem.
And when he spoke with journalist Bill Boggs here in 1977,
which is
greedy people.
Greedy.
It was a message that rings true to this very day.
Some of the guys that you've dealt with at NBC, that some of these guys really want to promote racism actively, or is it a subconscious?
I just think it's part of capitalism, is to promote racism.
A history lesson in this capitalistic society.
In order to make things work, if you feel better because you're white and you can get a job, you use that. I mean, I would.
Absolutely.
Say, I'm sorry, Jack, but they say I'm white. I'm going to use this.
Right. Absolutely.
Get this job. I'm hungry. But and that separates people. So they keep people separated, and that keeps them from thinking about the real problem.
From a man who saw things through as clear a lens as one can.
Yeah, racism is integrally linked to capitalism, and I think it's a mistake to assume that we can combat racism by leaving capitalism in place.
A point the great Angela Davis echoed on PBS.
There's a necessity for racist stereotypes and for racism in capitalism. It will keep being generated as long as there's a necessity for it.
As well as director, producer, singer, songwriter, and activist Boots Riley.
Well, let's start with the easy target, which is playing to people's racism, and then we'll actually play it out in the way we want, which is to gut and dismantle the whole thing and create a very broad, racially distributed underclass, because fundamentally these people don't want a public sector.
And the late Michael Brooks. As historian and professor of economics Walter Johnson put it, there was no such thing as capitalism without slavery. Johnson's guiding concept is racial capitalism. Racism as a technique for exploiting black people and for fomenting the hostility of working class whites towards blacks, so as to enable white capitalists to extract value from everyone else.
The wealth creation from slavery, it's not just the labor. So it's not just that slaves are growing cotton and it's cheap to have cotton produced by slaves because you're not paying for wages. It is also the ownership of humans was collateral, was capital that you can then use to grow that wealth.
The 13th Amendment and its humongous flaw that is included in it allowed this idea to prosper and thrive to this day in the year 2021, which was an exception in the case of those citizens found guilty of a criminal offense via the NAACP. 32% of the US population is represented by African Americans and Hispanics, compared to 56% of the US incarcerated population being represented by African Americans and Hispanics. Jody Melamed put it like this: racial capitalism is a technology that correctly identifies capital's nature. Capital can only be capital when it is accumulating, and it can only accumulate by producing and moving through relations of severe inequality among human groups.
The racist culture that we have is necessitated by capitalism.
There is no other way of putting it. The deck is stacked against minorities in this country, including those wanting a better life, not just for themselves, but for their family, their children, and their children's children. This is nothing new. Unfortunately, because of the 13th Amendment, prison labor is slave labor, meaning companies, which Common Dreams estimated to be nearly 4,000, benefited directly from these practices. As Malcolm X put it, you can't have capitalism without racism.
These conditions have been created by global capitalism.
Put bluntly, in order for capitalism to work, there must be a ruling class and a working class, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie and those who own the means of production, and they make decisions which impact everyone. The working class produces wealth in society, but capitalism separates them from it. You can go back as far as Andrew Jackson, who took 11 million acres of land from the Choctaw and other southern tribes, passed the land on to white settlers, then sent the tribal people on the Trail of Tears, exiling them to Oklahoma and Kansas. Thousands died along the way. The land taken from Native Americans in general, and the 11 million acres taken from the Choctaw in particular were collateral for cotton planters to borrow money.
People that get to become executives become like the people that were already executives.
I don't know, maybe
They go in with good intentions, but it eats them up. It's like a cesspool.
And many join in, as Pryor notes. In conclusion, racial privilege allows some, typically the most loyal to elite interests, to ascend more easily than black and brown workers. Thus, when it comes to the corporate world, white men predominate in management and executive positions. If you'd like to hear more thought-provoking content like TYT Sports on Facebook, and to help in my journey to keep media independent, go to tyt.com/Rick.